Welcome to my YouTube channel History Chapter. Today I am start my discussion from Cultural India Chittorgarh Fort. Fast facts. Location: Chittorgarh Fort, Rajasthan, built by Chittorgarh Mori. Occupations: Mayors of Chittor, Ghulias of Medapta, Sissoids of Mewar. Area: 691 from 9 acres. Current status: the fort has been declared as UNESCO World Heritage Site. Visiting time: 9:45 am to 6:30 pm. Important structures: Vijay Stamp, Kirti Stamp, Gamok Reserves, Rana Kumbha Place, Padmi Palace, Mira Mandir, Kalipta Mandir, Fateh Prakash Place, Jain Mandir. 7 gates of the fort: Pandal Pole, Bhairan Pole, Humayun Pole, Jora Pole, Ganesh Pole, Laxman Pole, and Ram Pole. Chittorgarh Fort is regarded as a symbol of Rajput chivalry, resistance, and bravery. The fort is situated 175 km to the east of Jaipur and is believed to the named after the person who built it. Chittorgarh Mori, the famous Chittorgarh Fort, which is one of the largest in India, is situated on a 180-meter high hill that rises from the banks of river Barrage. The fort is known as for its 7 gates, namely Pattern Gate, Ganesh Gate, Hanuman Gate, Bharan Gate, Jyotra Gate, Lakshman Gate, and the main gate, which is named after the Lord Ram. The Chittorgarh Fort houses many palaces like the Rana Kumbha Palace, the Fateh Prakash Place, the Tower of Victory, and Rani Padamini Place. All these structures are significant for their Rajput and architectural features. There are also many temples within the fort. A huge complex of giant temples are a major attractions. Chittorgarh Fort, along with other the Hills Fort of Rajasthan, was declared as UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2013. History of the fort. In ancient India, the palace where the fort is currently present was known as Chittorgarh. Due to the ancients of this fort, there are no clear evidences supporting the erosion of the fort. There is, however, a bunch of theories that are still subjected to the database. The most common theory states that Chittorgarh Mori, a local Mayora ruler, built the fort. A water body which was situated next to the fort is said to have been created by the legendary hero of Mahabharata, Bhima. The legend has it that Bhima once struck the ground with all his might, which gives rise to a huge reservoir. Bhimal Kund, an artificial tank next to the fort, was where the legendary reserves once sat. It said, thanks to the fort's majestic appearance, many rulers in the past have tried to capture it in an attempt to make it their own. Baba Rawal of the Gwalior Dynasty was one of the earliest rulers to have captured the fort successfully. It is said that the fort was captured by him around 730 AD. After defeating the Moors, to whom the fort once belonged, another version of the story states that Baba Rawal did not capture the fort from the Moors but from the Arbas, who had captured it from the Moors even before the arrival of Baba Rawal. It is said that Baba Rawal was part of the army led by Nagava, eye of the Gujrara Parithra dynasty. It is believed that this army was mighty enough to defend off the famous crops of Arab. who were considered empresses on a battlefield back then. Another legend has it that the fort was given a part of dowry to Baba Rival by the Moris when they gave the hand of one of their princes in marriage to Baba Raval. The consequence of Aladdin Khilji, the fort renamed within the rulers of the Gwalior dynasty for a long period of time until 1303, when the ruler of Delhi Sultanate Alauddin Khilji decided to capture it. He took over the ownership of the fort from King Rathamishra after a siege that lasted for about 8 months. This conquest is associated with massacres and bloodshed, as many believe that Alauddin Khilji ordered the execution of more than 30,000 Hindus after capturing the fort. Another famous legend states that the fort was captured by Khilji in an attempt to force Padmini, the queen of Ratansha, into an extramarital relationship. This motive of Khilji is said to have resulted in the mass self-immolation Johor of Chittorgarh women, led by Queen Padmini. A few years later, Alauddin Khilji passed on the fort to his son Khizr Khan, who possessed it until 1311 AD. Changes of ownership. Unable to withstand the continuous operations by the Rajput, Khizr Khan gave up the fort to the Sonigra chief Maldeva. This ruler held the possession of the fort for the next 7 years before Hamir Singh of the Mayor Dynasty decided to snatch it away from him. Hamir then came up with a plan to deceive Maldeva and finally managed to capture the fort. Hamir Singh is credited with turning the Mayor Dynasty into a military machine. Hence, the descendants of Hamir enjoyed the luxuries offered by the fort for years. One such famous descendant of Hamir who came to the throne in 1433 AD was Rana Kumbha. Though the Mewar dynasty flourished into a stronger military force under the reign of Rana, plans to capture the fort by various other rulers were in full swing. Unexpectedly, his death was caused by his own son Rana Udaismia, who killed the father to ascend in throne. This was perhaps the beginnings of the end of the famous Mewar dynasty. On March 16, 1527, one of the descendants of Rana Udaismia was defeated in a battle of Babur and the Mewar dynasty grew weaker. Using this an opportunity, Bahadur Shah of Muzaffarabad dynasty sacked the fort in 1535. Once again, there were loss of lives through massacres and Johor. Akbar invasions. In 1567, Emperor Akbar, who wanted to capture the whole of India, set his eyes on the famous Chittorgarh Fort. During this time, the palace was being ruled by Rana Uday Singh, second of the Mewar dynasty. Akbar had a massive army and hence most of the rulers of India were accepting defeat even before trying out Akbar's strong army on the battlefield. Few brave kings like Rana of Mewar had shown resistance to Akbar's demands. This led to a war between the Mughal Emperor and the army of the Mewar. After a gore battle which lasted for months, Akbar defeated Rana Uday Singh's its army and took over the ownership of Chittorgarh and with it the fort. The fort then remained with the Mughals for a long period of time. Layout of the fort. The fort, when viewed from above, looks roughly like a fish spread across an area of 700 acres. The circumference of the fort alone covers an area of 13 kilometers. There are 7 massive gates safeguarding all the entrance. The main gate is called as Ram Gate. The fort has 65 structures including temples, palaces, memorials and water bodies. There are two prominent towers within the permissions of the fort, namely Vijay Stamba Tower of Victory and Kriti Stambla Tower of Fame. Vijay Stamba was built by Rana Kumbha in 1444-48 to celebrate his victory over Mahmud Shah I Khilji. The tower is dedicated to Lord Vishnu. The slabs in the uppermost part of the tower contain a details generally of the rulers Chittor and their deeds. The fifth floor of the towers contain the names of Archie Chittorgarh Fort and his 3 sons who helped him build the tower. The remarkable religious tolerance and tolerance practiced by the Rajput is clearly visible in the Victory Tower. The Jain goddess Padmavati sits at the topmost story, while the third story and the eighth story have the word Allah carved in Arabic. Kriti Stamba was erected by Bhagadwal Jain in the 12th century to honor Adinath, the first Jain Tirthankar. It was built during the reign of Rawal Kumar Singh's c. 1179 to 1191. The tower is 22 meters high. Next to Vijay Stamba stands the famous Rana Kumbha Palace, which is now in ruins. The palace once served as the main residence of Rana Kumbha and is one of the oldest edifices within the fort. Next to the palace of Rana Kumbha stands the Fateh Prakash Palace, built by Rana Fateh Singh. There are also modern halls and a museum located next to these impressive places. It was built in the Rajput style of architectures and has a vast collection of wood crafts, post-medieval status of Jain, Ambeka and Indra. Weapons like axes, knives and shields, terracotta status of local tribal people, painting and crystals war. Next to the Kriti Stamba stand a temple dedicated to the goddess Saint Mira. In the southern part stand the majestic 3 stories structures Rani Padmini Place. A few meters away from the Padmini Place is where the famous Kalika Mata temple is located. Initially a temple dedicated to the sun god, it was reconstructed to house goddess Kali. Towards the western side of the fort stand another temple dedicated to goddess Tujla Bhavani. The 7 gates. All the gates were built for security purpose and not surprisingly. The gates have special architectural designs. The gates have pointed arch to make sure it provides extra protection should there be an attack. Notched parapets were built on the top of gates, enabling soldiers to shoot arrows at the enemy army. There is a common road that runs inside the fort, connecting all the gates. The gate in the turn led to various places and temples within the fort. All the gates have historical significance. Prime Bhag Singh was killed at the Padan gates during one of the sieges in the year 1535 AD. During the last siege, led by the Imperial Akbar, Rao Jaimal of Bednori was allegedly killed by the Mughal Emperor himself. This incident is said to have taken place somewhere in between the Behram Gate and Hanuman Gate. Architecture. All the 7 gates of the fort are nothing but massive stone structures aimed at providing maximum security from the potential threat of enemies. The entire fort is built in such a way that it makes it almost impregnable for the enemies to enter. The ascent the fort one has to go through a difficult path, which itself proves that the architectural design of the fort was aimed at keeping the enemies at bay. This is one of the main reasons why the fort was sieged by various kings at regular intervals. In between the second and the third gate, there are two chairs or cenotaphs built in honor of Jaimol and Pata, the heroes of 1568 AD. When the fort was sieged by Emperor Akbar, these cenotaphs are considered as architectural marvels. The tower of the fort is 9 stories and is adorned with the sculptures of Hindu deities and stories from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. The towers provides a breathtaking view of the city. Architecture of palace. The palace of Rana Kumbha was built using plastered stone. One of the main features of this palace it is its series of canopied balconies. Suraj Gate leads to the entrance of the palace, which is associated with a host of legends. Padani Place is an impressive edifice with the 3 stories. The old palace, which was ruined due to various reasons, was reconstructed in the early 19th century. The building as it stands today, it is white in color. The architectural design of the old palace was a nice blend of Rajput and Mughal architectures. Now I am discuss cultural India Agra Fort. Fast facts. Location Agra Fort, Uttar Pradesh, built by Akbar, built in the year 1573. Purpose main residence of the Mughals. Area 3 lakhs 80,000 square meters. Current status the fort is UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Visiting time sunrise to sunset. Entry to Agra Fort is allowed through the Amar Singh Gate only. Agra Fort was built in the year 1573 under the region of Akbar, one of the greatest Mughal emperors. It took more than 4,000 workers and 8 years of hardship to complete the fort, knowing the significance of its location. Akbar built the fort to make the main residence of Mughals. The fort remained as the main residence of the emperors, belonging to the Mughal dynasty until the year 1638. The fort houses numerous impressive structures like the Jahangir Mahal, Khas Mahal, Diwan-i-Khas, Diwan-i-Am, Machinery Bhavan and Moti Masjid. In 1633-38, the capital of the Mughal dynasty was moved from Agra to Delhi, causing the Agra fort to lose its status as the main residence of the Mughal emperors. The fort is separated from its sister monuments Taj Mahal by just 2.5 kilometers. Often described as the Walled City, Agra Fort is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Today the fort is a major tourist spot and attracts many tourists from all over the world. History of the fort. Agra Fort is known for its rich history. The fort has been owned by many emperors and rulers in the past, undergoing many changes in its appearance. It all began in the year 1526 when the first battle of Panipat was fought between Babur and Ibrahim Lodi of the Lodi dynasty. When Babur defeated Ibrahim Lodi, he made the fort and the palace of Ibrahim Lodi as his home. He then modified the fort by building a huge step well Bauli in sight. The fort soon became an important monument to the Mughal. In fact, Babur's successor Humayun's coronation took place at the fort in the year 1530. Soon emperors from other dynasties started eyeing the fort and efforts to win over the same began. In 1540, Sher Shah Shuri is of the Shore Empire waged a war against Humayun and defeated him at Bilgaram. Sher Shah Shuri took over the ownership of the fort from Humayun and made minor changes it too, so as it to suit his own architectural taste. The fort stayed with the impulse of the Shur dynasty for the next 15 years. In 1555, Humayun managed to recapture Agra with it the fort as well, but a year later, Humayun recommended the general military commander of Adi Shah Shuri, final emperor of the Shor dynasty, captured Agra. He purposed the fleeing army to Delhi. The Battle of Tughlaqabad ensued between him and Tardi Begin Khan, the military commander of the Mughals. Tardi Beg Khan lost the battle convincingly and Humayun Muhammad crowned himself the king. However, on November 5, 1555, and barely a month into the kingship of Humayun, Akbar along with its army marched into Delhi and defied the focus of Humayun. The fort once again belonged to the Mughals but was first disintegrating. Back then it was known as Badagal and was built by bricks alone. Realizing its historical and situational significance, Akbar decided to rebuild it with red sandstone. During the reign of Shah Jahan, the fort was modified considerably and took the front from. Shah Jahan destroyed some of the edifices within the fort and rebuilt it as per his own architecture's taste. During the early 17th century, the fort was captured by the Maratha Empire. During this period, the fort saw many honors, including various Maratha emperors and their enemies, which included a host of Mughal emperors in 1761. The Maratha underwent a massive defeat at the hands of Ahmad Shah Durrani, founder of the Durrani Empire. The emperors of the Durrani dynasty made the fort their home until 1785. In 1785, the fort was regained by the Marathas under the region of Mahajidi Sindh. The Marathas then lost their battle against the British in the Second Anglo-Maratha War with the fort. The British then enjoyed the comfort of the fort until it was handed over to the Government of India in 1947. Lay out the fort. The fort, when viewed from above, has a semicircular shape. The base of the fort faces the bank of the river Yamuna. The Agra fort is enclosed by a double battlement massive wall of red sandstone. This wall is about 2 km perimeter and it is interrupted by graceful curves and lofty bastions. The walls of the fort are massive, 70 feet high. The fort stretches for almost 2.5 kilometers. It has 4 gates, one of the each side. Out of the 4 gates, the Delhi Gate and Lahore Gate are the most prominent ones. The Lahore Gate was later renamed as Amar Singh Gate. Akbar used the Delhi Gate as his main entrance and the gate also served as a security against the invaders. There is also an inner gateway known as the Elephant Gate. The entrance were built in such a manner that The invaders found it difficult to enter the fort even with the help of the war elephants. The Indian army still uses the Delhi gate for security purposes. The fort has various places and halls. Among the palace, the prominent one of the Mechi Bhavan, Khas Mahal and Shah Jahan Mahal. The Amar Singh's gates lead to the courtyard, magnificent Diwan I.M. Hall of Public Audience is one of the right hand side. A little further lay the royal pavilions which houses the famous Nagina Masjid as Mina Masjid. The fort was also royal baths made out of marbles which were used by princes, also places of worship and private marketplace for the ladies were built within the fort. At the base of the fort, a secret passage was dug in an attempt to access it with ease. During time of emergency, other attractions of the fort include a grape garden, a jasmine tower, a mirror palace, Shish Mahal, country domes, and the ruins of Akbar once magnificent palace. It is said that the fort once housed 500 beautiful looking buildings. Unfortunately, many of those buildings were destroyed at different time periods of various reasons. Architectures. Bricks formed the base of Agra fort structures. Red sandstone was brought all the way from Rajasthan and that was laid on the external surfaces. Back then, the entire fort was built using the red sandstone. The appearance of the fort underwent a major changes during the reign of Shah Jahan. Unlike his grandfather, Shah Jahan was smitten by the beauty of white marble. Hence, he destroyed many structures within the fort only to rebuild them using white marble. Shah Jahan was made to spend his final days in the Museum Burj of the Agra fort, which was built by him. The Museum Burj is located on the left of the Khas Mahal. It is beautiful out-angle tower within the open pavilion. It is said that Shah Jahan used a view Taj Mahal from his very palace. When the British took over the ownership of Agra fort, much more changes were made to the fort. They destroyed many structures and edifices with historical significance, colliding politics reasons, and for raising braggers. The structures that managed to survive showcase the real complexity and workmanship of Mughal architectures. Fine examples of the Mughal architectures within the fort are the Delhi Gate, Amar Singh's Gate, and the Bengali Mahal. These structures not only represent Mughal architectures but are also example of Akbari architectures, which is also known as Indo-Islamic architectures. Among these structures of Delhi Gate is considered as the most prominent for its workmanship and architectural design. Even today, it is regarded as one of the Akbar masterpiece. Speaking about masterpiece, there is an interesting legend associated with the architectures of the Agra fort. It is said that the royal rooms of the fort were built in such a way that they would remain cool even during the summer. The legend has its that walls were made hollow and then filled with the water from the rivers so that they would remain cool. Important structures inside the Agra fort. Jahangir House. This is the monolithic tank and was built by Jahangir. The tank was initially used for bathing. It is now a part of Akbar Bengali Mahal. Shahjahani Mahal. The Shahjahani Mahal is probably one of the earliest attempts of Emperor Shah Jahan to turn a red sandstone palace into a palace of white marble. Babupur Boali Stepwell. Babupur built a stone step well which took care of the water need in the ancient fort of Agra. This was probably one of the earliest modifications made to the fort. Nagina Masjid. Nagina Masjid is a mosque which was built by Shah Jahan. The mosque was built using white marble only and was considered a private palace for worship. Divan and M Hall of Republic Audience. The hall was built by Shah Jahan. Interestingly, the hall was first built using red sandstone but was later shell plastered, giving it a look of white marble. Ghazni Gate. The Ghazni gates actually belong to the tomb of Mahmud of Ghazni, one of the rulers of the Ghaznivide empires. The gate was moved into the fort by the British for political reasons. Bengali Mahal. This palace was built by the Akbar and was later modified by Shah Jahan. An interesting aspect of this palace, it is said to be a housing secret building hidden underneath and the palace. Akbar Mahal. The ruins of Akbar's famous palace still remains in the fort. Akbar breathed his last in the very palace. The entire place was built using red sandstone. The secret withens. Agra Fort has many secret subterranean apartments and edifices. It is said that the entire fort is interconnected through tunnels and other underground pathway. According to historians, the emperors who owned the fort during their respective regions are said to have contributed to the secret tunnels for obvious reasons. One such known tunnel is located near the water gate connecting the fort to the banks of river Yamuna. Amber Fort. Fast fact: location Jaipur, Rajasthan. Built by Raja Man Singh. Built in the year 1592. Materials used redstone, sandstone and marble. Purpose: main residence of the Rajput Marhabs. Current status: Amber Fort was declared as UNESCO World Heritage Site. Visiting time 8 am to 5:30 pm. Delhi, as also referred to the Amber Place, the fort is located on a hill in Amber, Rajasthan, just 11 km from the city of Jaipur. The Amber Fort is a major tourist attraction built by Raja Man Singh. The fort, which is also supplied as Amber Fort, is a scenic marvel. It stands on top of a easily scalable mountain, which is situated right next to the beautiful Mauta Lake. The fort's majestic appearance and its geographical advantages make it a special palace to visit. The fort presents a fascinating blend of Hindu and Muslim architectures. It is built using red sandstone and white marble. The palace complex of the Amber Fort has a very attractive apartments. This complex was built by Raja Man Singh's, Mirza Raja Jai Singh's and Sawai Jai Singh over a period of about two centuries. This palace complex was used as the main residence of Rajput Marhabs for a long period of time. Amber Fort is associated with rich history which involves teriyaki and bloodshed. History of Amber Fort. Amber Fort, Raja Alan Singh, who once ruled the Chanda clan of Means, was probably the first king to ever set foot on Amber. He set up his palace on top of the hill, which currently holds the Amber Fort, and started to rule over his subjects in the new town. He named his town Hong Kong. One day an old woman with a child approached Raja Alan Singh seeking refuge in his kingdom. The king took them in upper heredity and even raised the child, who was named Dhola Rai. Dhola Rai was then sent to Delhi to spread the legacy of the Meena kingdom. Instead of obeying his king's orders, he came back with a small army of his own, which comprised of Rajputs. The Rajput then slayed out everyone belonging to the clade of Minas without showing them any sign of mercy. It is said that the Mac-Asi took place on the day of Diwali when the Minas were conducting a special ritual known as Pitra Trapan. Back then, it was customary for the Minas to set aside all their weapons while performing Pitra Trapan. The Rajput, who were aware of this practice, took advantages of the situation and made Hong Kong their own. This act of theirs was considered as coward and despicable. The town, along with the beautiful hill which held the palace-like fort, now belonged to the Kachwata Rajputs. Raja Mansingh of the Kachawa house took over the throne from his procedures in early 1600s. He then started building the Amber Fort after destroying the structures that was already built on the top of the hill. The fort was further developed by successor of Raja Mansingh, Jai Singh, over the next 2 centuries or so. The fort underwent continuous renovations and improvements under the region of various Rajput Maharajs, including Mirza Raja Jai Singh. The present fort was completed in the late 16th century. In the 1727, the Maharajas of Rajputs decided to shift their capital from Amber to Jaipur, leaving no further changes to the appearance of fort. Constructions. The construction of Amber Fort was started in 1592. It was modified on regular intervals by several rulers and trend continued up until late 1600. The fort was mostly constructed using red sandstone and white marble. Though basically a fort, it also served as the main residence of Rajput Maharaj. Hence, in its subsequent modification, the fort was deliberately made to look more like a lavish place. There is also another place which was constructed before the construction of Amber Fort. The old palace resets on a valley behind the fort. This palace is one of the oldest in India. Layout of the fort. 4 different sections combine to form the fort of the palace. Each section has its own gate and courtyard. The first gate, which is also main entrance, is called Suraj Pol or Sun Gate. The gate faces east, witnessing the sunrise every morning, and hence the name. The gate leads to the first courtyard named Jalebi Chowk, when the palace was still being ruled by the Rajputs. The soldiers used to assemble and celebrate the victory in the very courtyard. This was visual treat and was often viewed by women through windows. Since the royal dignitaries used to enter through the Sun Gate, the palace was heavily guarded. The front courtyard of the fort complex is adorned with a splendid pillared hall of the Diwan and the 2 tiered painted gateway Ganesh Pole. The entrance of the Amber Fort is through the Dile Aram garden, which is laid out in the traditional Mughal style. An impressive flight of stairs leads to the Diwani-Am Hall of Public Audience, which has latticed galleries and double row of columns, each having a capital in the shape of elephants on the top. This hall is laid on the second courtyard. To the right are steps that lead to a small temple of goddess Sila Devi. The temple has massive doors made of silvers. There are two magnificent buildings laid out in the third courtyard. The buildings are situated opposite to each other. On the left, the beautiful Jai Mandir, which is also called Shish Mahal, Palace of Mirrors, is situated. As the name suggested, Jai Mandir was used to celebrate victories. Other celebrations too were held in the buildings. The building opposite to Jai Mandir is called Sukh Mahal, Hall of Pleasure. This palace was used by the royal family whenever they felt like had to rest or spend some quality time alone. Towards the southern region of the courtyard lies the famous palace built by Raja Man Singh. This is the oldest structure in the entire fort as it stands today. The exit route from this palace leads directly to the town of Amber. The fourth courtyard is rather an interesting one. The royal women, including the mistress, lived in his part of palace. They were collectively known as Zinana. Even the queens and queen mothers lived in this part. This part of palace was extremely secluded as the king used to visit the queens on or their mistress without getting noticed by anyone. Architectures. The architectural style of the fort is blend of Mughal and Rajput architectures. One of the best examples of style within the fort is the Ganesh Pol Mirza Raja Jai Singh, who ruled the palace from 1621 to 1627, was instrumental in building the Ganesh Pol. The gate is embellished with the mosaics which make it look colorful and grand. Among the main attractions of the fort are Jai Mandir and Shish Mahal, while the Shish Mahal was enailed with exquisite mirrors. The Jai Mandir, hanging on the upper floor, is a superb blend of Mughal and Jai Rajput style of architectures. This is evident from the elegantly carved jali screens and stucco work. Jalmandir has huge opening which is covered with sand doors. A special feature of these structures is the flow of water through the buildings, making the entire hall air conditioned. Shish Mahal too has a special feature. Back then, the entire edifice would glow even at the light of a few candles. Such was the architectural brilliance of this especially designed structures. The mirrors used in this place are converts in nature. It was built during the reign of King Man Singh in the late 1600s. Other major architectural attractions of the fort include the Magic Flower Palace of Man Singh and the garden. While the magic flowers depicts two hovering butterflies, the palace is known as Pavilion. The garden resembles the Chahar Bagh or the famous Mughal garden. Also, there is a pool which is star-shaped at the center of the garden. Another interesting architectural design of the fort is the fourth courtyard. Since the king had to visit their queens and mistress in the secret, the courtyard demanded a special design. It was built in such a way that no one could guess which room the king would enter as the courtyard. With multiple rooms had a common corridor, the walls of Amber Fort are adorned with paintings of huntings and were along with precious stones and mirrors set into the plasters. The Mata Lake at the forefront of the fort gives spectacular and beautiful reflections of the magnificent Amber Fort Palace. Conservation of the fort along with five other forts of Rajasthan, was named as one of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites in the year 2013. The Amar Development and Management Authority has so far spent around 40 crore rupees to safeguard the fort from threats and external damages. However, commercialization of the fort is proving to be a huge treat. It is said that a team of Bollywood movie damaged an old canopy belonging to the fort. The team had also demolished edifices like Chand Mahal, a country yard name, Jaleb Chowk, and other ancient buildings by drilling holes as part of fixing a set of movie. The Rajasthan High Court and commanded this act and stopped any further damage by cancelling permission to shoot the movie within the premises of the fort. Following this incident, no movie is allowed to be shot anywhere near the Amber Fort. Now we are discuss a next topic, Gwalior Fort. Fast facts: location Gwalior, Madhya Pradesh, India. Purpose: constructed to honor a sage named Gwalior. Built and said to have existed since the 6th century, several structures built during the course of history. Materials used: sandstones and lime mortar. Area 741.3 acres. Ground status: the Archaeological Survey of India (ASI) look after the fort. On among many hills of Fort of India, the Gwalior Fort stands on a vast rocky hill named Gopal. Originally built in sandstone and lime mortar, the fort is one of the prominent structures in Gwalior. The fort has had a long history, sieged and captured by many rulers in the past. At one point of time, the Gwalior Fort was regarded as North and Central India's most invincible fortress. The fort houses two places, Gujari Mahal and Man Mandir, which were built by Raja Man Singh's Tomar during the 15th century. It also houses numerous temples built by various kings at different points of time. Over the years, the fort has undergone many changes but remains an important marvel of Gwalior. The fort is also associated with an interesting legend and has a rich history behind it. Early history of the fort. The construction of the fort is associated with a legend and hence the exact date of its construction is unknown. The legend has its that a local king named Suraj Sen ruled this region in the 3C. The king developed leprosy, a deadly disease which could not be cured in those days. When the king had lost all hopes, a sage named Gwalior came to the king's rescue and miraculously cured the disease by asking king to drink water from a sacred pond. It is believed that he present pond inside the fort is the same pond that helped that king. When the king was cured, he decided to build a fort to honor the sage and also named the city after the sage, which came to be known as Gwalior. The sage confirmed the king with the title Pal, meaning protector, and promised him that his descendants would rule over the fort as long as they bear the little Pal. After this incident, many descendants of Suraj Sen Pal ruled over the fort, but his 84 successors. Tej Karan lost the possession of the fort. There are no historical records of evidences to prove the fort's real age. Tough inscriptions within the fort indicates that fort must have been standing here from the 6th century, but there is no solid proof to prove the same. However, there are certain evidences that suggested the existence of the fort from the late 19th century. One such evidence is the existence of the Teli Ka Mandir, a Hindu temple said to be built by the Gurajraja Parithars. From 10th century onwards, the fort was ruled over by the kings of the Kichacha Pagda Dynasty. Later history of the fort. Around the 10th century, many Muslims rulers tried their best to capture the fort. Mahmud of Ghazni besieged the fort in 1022 CE, but he lifted the siege when presented the 35 elephants. Qutbuddin Aibak, the first Sultan of Delhi Sultanate, captured the fort in 1196, only to lose it a few years later. However, it diminished. The third ruler of the Delhi Sultanate recaptured the fort in 1232 CE. Around 1398, the fort was captured by the Tomars and it remained with them for a long time. Raja Man Singh's Tomar constructed several structures within the fort, changing its appearance forever. Meanwhile, rulers of the Delhi Sultanate were constantly trying to recapture the fort. One such attempt by Sikandar Lodi failed in 1505, but his son Ibrahim Lodi managed to capture the fort in 1516, which resulted in the death of Raja Man Singh's Tomar. The fort was, however, soon taken by Babur, the founder of the Mughal dynasty. However, the Mughal lost it to the sole ruler Sher Shah Suri in 1542. In 1558, Mughal Emperor Akbar recaptured the fort and turned it into a prison, where he executed his prisoners and rivals. Post the region of Aurangzeb, the Mughal Empire weakened, resulting in the loss of the fort, which was now captured by the Rana chief clans of Gohad. Mahadji Shind of the Skinda dynasty captured it from Gohad Rana Chatar Singhs, but eventually lost to the fort to the British. In 1780, the British gave away the fort to the Ranas in exchange for their support during the spy mutiny in the 18th century. The Maharathas then captured it again from the Ranas, but lost it to the British during the Second Anglo-Maratha War. The British then largely controlled the fort and sometimes even gave up its ownership to the Skinda family for political reasons. In 1886, after capturing the whole of India, the British gave the fort to the Secondees. As the fort was little importance to them at time, the Secondees then ruled over the fort and even came up with their own structures within the fort, until it was finally taken by the government of India post-independence. Layout of the fort. The Gwalior fort spreads over an area of 3 square kilometers, 74.1.3 acres, surrounded by concrete walls of sandstone. The fort encloses several structures, temples, and 2 main places. The fort is divided into 5 parts. Each part is named after the direction of which it lies. There are 2 main gates, namely the Elephant's Gate and Badalgarh Gate. The Elephant Gate or the Hathai Pole lies in the southwest and leads to the Manmandir Palace. On the southern side of the fort stand an impressive set of temples, 21 in numbers. dedicated to the Jain Tirthankars. Other significant structures within the Gwalior Fort include the Karan Palace, the Aurangzeb Jahangir Mahal, the Shah Jahan Mahal, and the Gujri Mahal. Temples within the fort. There are several temples within the fort. Some of them are mentioned below. Sarijal Jain Temple Caves. There are many idols of Jain Tirthankars that are carved inside caves and on rocks. Carved during the period of 7th to 15th century, the tallest among these idols in the Rishbhana are Adintra, which stand at 58 feet 4 inches. The second tallest idol at 35 feet height belongs to the Suprashvantha. Idols on the Gopachali Hill. The Gopachal Hill houses more than 1500 idols, many of which are carved on the rocks. The idols are said to be carved during the region of Kirti Singhs and Dangar Singhs of the Tomar Dynasty. One such idol of Bhagwan Parvas stands at an imposing 42 feet height and 30 feet width. Many such idols were destroyed by the Mughal emperors when they captured the fort. Telika Mandir. The Telika Mandir is the most famous for all temples within the Gwalior Fort. This temple was built in the Dravidian architecture style and is notable for its generously sculptured exterior. The temple is the oldest part of the fort and houses Buddhist architectural elements as well. Telika Mandir, which originally housed Vishnu as its main deity, now has Shiva as the main deity. Sasbahu Temple. These are the basically two pillar temples that stand next to each other, one larger and then the other. Originally, there was only one temple dedicated to Lord Vishnu. This temple was frequently visited by the queens of the Kachachapal Pagals. Later, another temple dedicated to Lord Shiva was built next to this temple, so that the daughter-in-law of the king, who was an ardent Shiva devote, could worship her favorite deity. Since the temples were visited by the queen and her daughter-in-law, the pillar temple were collectively known as the Sasbahu Temple. Places within the fort. There are many places within the fort that were built by different kings at different point of time. Some of them are mentioned below. Man Mandir Palace, built by Raja Man Singh's Tomar in the 15th century. Man Mandir Palace served as the main residence of rulers of the Tomar dynasty for a long period of time. Style ties of various colors, including turquoise, green, and yellow, are used to decorate the interiors of the palace. Gujarai Mahal. This too was built by Raja Man Singh Tomar for his beautiful wife. Mirgiani, a Gujar princess, it is said that the queen of Man Singh demanded a private palace for herself, which resulted in the construction of the famous Gujari Mahal. Today the palace has been converted into the museum, which houses rare artifacts and sculptures of Hindu and Jain deities dating back to the 1st and 2nd century BC. Vikram Mahal. This was originally built as a temple dedicated to Lord Shiva by Vikadra Mehta Singhs of Tomar dynasty. The palace was restored after it was destroyed by the Mughal emperors during their reign. Karan Mahal. This palace is named after the king who built it. Kam Mahal served as the private residence of Kirti Singhs, who was also known as Kam Singhs. He was the second king of the Tomar dynasty. Other important structures. There are several other important structures that stand within the premises of the Gwalior Fort. Each structure has its own historical significance and was built within a multiple purpose. Some of the structures are mentioned below. Monument. The Gurada monuments stand next to the Telka Mandir. These structures, which was built to honor Lord Vishnu, is the highest point of the fort. Indo-Islamic architecture style has been used to build these imposing monuments. Chattai of Bhim Singh's Rana. This impressive dome-shaped pavilion was built by Chittorgarh Singh, the successor to Bhim Singh Rana, as a memorial to his father. There is also an artificial lake next to the pavilion, which was also built by Charatara Singh. King Charatara Singh took over the fort after defeating the Mughal Star Ali Khan. Skindra School. This school was built exclusively for the prince and princess of the Skindra family. It was built by Madho Rao Skindra in the year 1897. After the British had handed over the fort to the Skindies. Gurdwara. The fort also houses a Gurdwara which was built as a memorial to Guru Hargobind, the sixth Sikh Guru. There are no significant evidence to prove when and by whom the Gurdwara was built.